Shalom Aleichem, thank you for turning up early. Appreciate it. Special thank you to Reb Nachman and Reb Zeitlin and everyone, all the Masadrim. If I could dedicate the shiur to my grandmother, Alev Shalom, whose Yotzad is today, Rachalea Bat Moshe. She was that any Hisayrus we get, or the limit should be a Aliyah for her Neshama, Amen. So we're still in Chaf Dalet, in Torah Chaf Dalet, in Tinyana, the second chelik of Likutei Moharan. And we looked last week, whenever we last learned, 2 weeks ago, we were looking at a number of different Makoros, mostly in Mishlei and in Chazal, which indicate the unification of the body and the mind. You can't really separate the two. We looked at quite a few examples. And in this particular Torah, Rav Nachman mentioned several times that Simcha is a refuah. It's not only an actual refuah, it is actually a way to avoid illness in the first place. Because all illnesses, it's claiming, actually come from some sort of a chasaron or kilkul in Simcha. So he uses the language of Hachmei HaRoifim. So everyone knows that Rav Nachman is not a huge fan of Roifim. Just check out paragraph Nun in Sichas Haran. It's one of the longest paragraphs in the whole Sichas Haran, where he goes to town on Roifim and medicines. So just check that out. But it's interesting that over here he doesn't say Roifim, he says Hachmei HaRoifim. Now Hachmei HaRoifim means that it's the wise amongst the Roifim. Now what makes a doctor a wise doctor versus just a doctor? So it's interesting that the whole concept of Chachma is something that Rav Nachman talks about in Nun Gimel, in Tinyana. I thought maybe I'll look at it briefly, but I'm just tell it to you outside first. Basically, a machshava is a stand alone. And Rav Nachman over there in Nun Gimel, he tells us that Noidali Akshav, just now, it became clear to him with a tremendous yediyah that a machshava is yakam me'od. Is extremely valuable. A thought has incredible, it can create an adava mamash. But then he explains that Chachma is even more valuable than one single thought. Because Chachma, he explains, is where you take really machshavas together and you create a binyan. So if I'm understanding that correctly, what Rav Nachman is basically telling us is that for someone to be a Chacham versus he's got the axiomatic information. He's a doctor because he passed the exams. He knows the actual book information. But to be a Chacham, you have to be beyond that. What's that mean? So in the language of Rav Nachman in Nun Gimel, I'll just quote it to you briefly. Right now, it was made known to me the great value of a machshava. It's exceedingly valuable. Actually creates, one thought can actually create something, really, literally. As long as all the alamas exist, which is really forever, that thought has a repercussion forever in all the alamas. All the time that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then it says v'chulu v'chulu, it doesn't say what is next. But and this is my personal understanding why Rav Nachman didn't say more in the words of Rav Nachman. So there's a Rashi in Dvarim, Perek Hey, Pasuk Zayin, where on the Pasuk Lo yeh lecha Elohim acherim al panai, don't have any other powers besides me. So Rashi says the Lashon, what's it mean? Don't have any other powers. For how long should that be? Kol zman she'ani kayim. As long as I exist. So as long as Hashem exists, which of course is forever, that's my understanding of what's missing there. But the Chachma Yakal Yoseh, wisdom is much greater. Ki machshava hu she'ola ala machshava selvad. What you think, that's what's going up on your mind right now. The Chachma hu she'boineh b'chochmasai binyanim sichlei. He creates buildings with his seichel. So v'hu yakam oid v'ik hadav sheyeh be'emes. Then he goes on to say it's got to be sincere. That when a person's coming up with a whole binyan, it's got to be because he wants this to understand Hashem's Torah, lishma, as opposed to impress or loy lishma. So it comes along. My understanding here is very simple. All my understanding is very simple. If you've got a hacham of a roifer, that means he looks at the whole body as a binyan. that means you don't look at one part of the body and just exclusively diagnose the person's illness based on that one part of the body. That's what Rambam says. I think I actually have the quote here. Rambam actually talks about how extremely difficult it is for a roifer to give medication. And he says why? Because you have to be that type of a roifer that has such a complete understanding of the entire body that when you hear what the ailment is of that particular dibur of that person, and he shows you where it's hurting him, you have to know all the questions that need to be asked to have a full diagnosis of what that might be connected to, because it's one unit, but there's many elements within that one unit of the body, and part of that is the mindset. So that's why it's so important not to. A chachma here is a binyan where you know all the rooms in the binyan, and you can't say, oh, this pipe or this wall is insignificant. We can take it away. It might be a supporting wall. It might be supporting the roof. Don't take that pipe out. Every part of the binyan has been thought through and is there for a reason. So a plumber may be completely, exclusively stuck on the plumbing, electrician on the the one who's designing the entire place has to have wisdom. He has to be a hacham to understand how everything interfaces. Everything is interconnected. So hachmei hareifim really means, if my understanding is that you've got to be a hacham who understands that the mind plays a huge role in the functioning of the body. It goes so far that mindset can actually affect the person's happiness or marashkora and atzvas. So that's what because that seems to be the connection that Rav Nachman is bringing. So in that I want to give you some quotes from Rambam that he actually brings in his medical writings. He lists a number of items that strengthen your body, and then he gives you a list of items that diminish body strength. And you and I think at first glance you would say, hey, what strengthens the body is exercise, the right diet, nutrition, proper sleep. So comes along Rambam. So he gives us 6 items which affect increasing body strength. Moderate wine consumption, moderate food ingestion, moderate physical exercise, anything that improves a bad cardiac or arterial condition, the heart and the flowing of the blood. Now, number 5 and 6 is going to surprise us if we didn't know this Torah. The control of anger, and number 6, the nurturing of happiness. So you and I might think, what's that got to do with anything? No, if you're going to be a hacham amongst the Reifim, then you will know that those play a huge role. Now, when you look at the 10 items that he says diminish body strength: fasting, insomnia, can't fall asleep, anxiety. Where do you see that on the body? Okay, it might be in the facial expression, but and we looked at Dai Gebelevish. We saw from Mishlei, Urkavat Samas Kina, that jealousy actually rots the bones, but before it gets to the rotting of the bones, says Rabbeinu Yonah on that pasuk, Perek Yudala pasuk Lamed, in Mishlei, that the body fat dissolves before it gets to the bones, and the bones are very strong. Yeah, jealousy in my mind can actually destroy my physical health and body. So anxiety is actually manifest, but he's giving this as a list of an item that diminishes body strength. And he actually adds the constant anxiety causes dissolution of body fat and loss of muscle substance. Number 4, severe emotional stress. 6, anger. So that's number 5, sorry. Number 6, constant desire for nashim, for women. Number 7, lust for money. 8, lust for political power. These are items that diminish a person's physical strength. Number 9, recurring thoughts that give a person no peace. Almost all of these items are not in the physical arena, they're all in the what's going on over here that affects my emotions. And number 10, not only did it hit number 10 in the Decalogue, it's number 10 in his list here, jealousy. Jealousy diminishes a person's physical ability. So it's interesting that it's I would say in the last 2 or 3 decades, there's more and more medical writings that are coming out proving that there really is a connection between what we think and therefore how our body responds in response to that. So I'm going to quote you here, you've probably heard of him, a research associate in ethnopharmacology. That's the study of how culture and known cures that are natural from plants, etc., in different cultures, when you put them all together, can actually give you a bigger picture of how to help a person who's got a physical ailment. So, research associate of ethnopharmacology at Harvard and best-selling author From Chocolate to Morphine, Dr. Andrew Weil, quite famous. So I'm going to quote to you word for word. Your mind has tremendous power over the body and plays a huge role in your health. It determines how every system within the body functions. The respiratory system, the endocrine system. Endocrine is the release of hormones that affect all a person's moods. The lymph system, your immunological response, that's ability to stand up against germs. The state of your entire physiology, all the functions and processes of all the combined systems of your body, all come from what you do inside your head. When the immune system becomes depressed, it is often the result of stress and what your mind focuses on. Anger and resentment are physical poisons to the body, and if we have poor coping skills, deficient social support, and high stress, then the internal balance of our bodies may be easily upset and our resistance lowered. Illness or disease then occurs more from our vulnerability than from external agents that would otherwise appear to be the cause of our health problems. The more vulnerable we are, the more risk we run of getting sick. The factors that place us at risk range from our attitudes to daily challenges, our coping with stress, the kind of food we eat, the genes we inherit, our mind, behavior, our environment, and our genetic predispositions are the common contributors to disease. More than anything else, it's our attitude to the daily hassles of life that mean the difference between coming down with an infection or remaining symptom-free. So that's just one quote. I've got others, but the main point is that Rav Nachman is not being mechadish something. He's just telling us the reality. That's what Rabbeinu Zal, everything he's telling us is really reality. The power of Hisbodus, the power of Nekudas Tovos, the power of Simcha, the power of Hischaskus, the power of realizing that Yush is literally non-existent. It's completely just a human-induced experience, but it's not reality. So that's what I think, one way to say Rabbeinu Zal is really like just putting it out there. This is reality in God's dictionary. Happiness is not only refuah, it's actually the reason why a person will not come down with an illness in the first place. So the last one I'll quote to you is Dr. Weil. External material objects are never cause of disease. That's a very powerful statement to say. External material objects are never a cause of disease, merely agents waiting to cause specific symptoms. He's talking about germs causing specific symptoms in susceptible hosts. So if my body is weak, lack of sleep, stress, and I'm down on myself, and I'm going through all sorts of things in my life, so that's where my immune system is lowered, and now I'm inviting whatever's out there, germs. And my body's perfectly capable of resisting those germs in a strong body. That's why we quoted Louis Pasteur, the discoverer of the germ, that the germ is nothing, the terrain is everything. And that in a healthy body, the germ is literally shut out from invasion. It's an extraordinary point, but this is really, I'm quoting because I think it's a chizuk for us. Rabbeinu Zal doesn't need, Rav Nachman doesn't need chizuk, but he's saying Chachmei HaRoifim. So I'm quoting from people who are looking at the body and mind as one system. You can't divorce the two. So rather than declaring war against disease with the hope of eliminating it, we ought to worry more about strengthening resistance to disease and learning to live in balance with it more of the time. So Rav Nachman is, when he talks about, let's say, Mara Shchora. So strictly speaking, Mara is the gallbladder. Shchora is literally black. And it happens to be the gallbladder, as you probably know. It's a pear-shaped sac that is really made of muscle, and it contains the secretions from the liver, which is technically it's called bile, B-I-L-E, and it's yellow in color, which I find very interesting. I'll share with you in a few moments why. And it's secreted from the gallbladder into the intestines. in preparation for when food is coming into the intestines from the stomach, there's probably going to be all sorts of food in there that is acidic. And acidic, when the body is too acidic, that's unhealthy for the body. And one of the ways to keep it alkaline is the secretion of the bile. This bile is actually, interestingly, yellow, and yellow on the spheres. I'm not a big maven in all these things, but happens to be on this thing familiar that the color yellow corresponds to bina. So you've got in the top two spheres, keta is chesed gomor. There's no room for anything that's negative. It's 100% love, chesed from Hashem. Chochmah beneath it is also 100%. It's not as intense as keta, but starting with bina, the next one down, that's when din starts to appear. So it's interesting that the yellow, which is bile, and it's extremely bitter. Mara is extremely, extremely bitter. But it's not, on its own, if I'm a roifer and I would look at it, I'd say, who needs this? It's so bitter, it could damage the body. And the answer is no. It actually provides a constant balance within the body in order to maintain the alkaline level against anything that's acidic that's coming into the intestines. So, it's interesting that yellow appears twice in the spheres, and the next one is in Tiferet. Tiferet, which you can translate as beauty, is referring to the constant balance within the Bria, and the body is always looking to balance itself out. That's why when a person sweats, it's really the cooling system of the body, or getting rid of toxicity. Everything the body does is brilliantly perfect, because it's designed brilliantly perfect. The misdiagnosis can often be because I'm looking at symptoms as a problem when in fact the symptoms are the solution. That's a different discussion. Something that I think medicine is coming back towards. That don't be afraid of symptoms, be afraid of the cause. Deal with the cause, don't get stuck in symptoms. America has a value system that glorifies symptoms and ignores the cause. Let's spend time analyzing the symptoms, and that is on across the board. Oh, you're in debt? No problem. I'll give you a better rate and consolidate all your debts under this loan over here. And I refinance my house as though I'm finding a solution to my problem. All I'm doing is creating new debt with a new rate of interest. It's always, the whole American system is doing this. And Rav Nachman is here to help us understand. Don't look at the Mara Shchora as something that is intrinsically negative, even though Rabbeinu Zaldas says in Mem Chept that he hates atzvus. But it's the atzvus that's it's the choice of atzvus. It's not atzvus itself. It's the choice of how I'm going to look at the world that Hashem says, please don't go there. Don't go there. It's not reality. This black dot, Mara Shchora, it looks bitter if you taste it, and it looks bitter because it's black. But this is what's going on all the rest of the time. And it's what Be'ez Hashem, we're going to immerse ourselves in, what Rabbeinu Zal is telling us in how to get out of here and stay in here. Because he's making the most extreme statement I've ever, help me if you know it differently, that anyone's ever said about Simcha. Mitzvah gedola, liyos b'simcha tamid. I mean, each one of those words is loaded on its own, but it's a mitzvah gedola against a vera gedola, but it's a mitzvah gedola. It's huge. Liyos, to exist, b'simcha, immersed inside. It's inside, b'simcha. So how do I get inside this? It really was talked about in 23 in Torah Chaf Gimel. We didn't get far enough for me to get into, so I will be borrowing from there. How do we grab the Mara Shchora? How do we grab the Atzvus? And so it becomes absorbed in all this. And we'll be borrowing from David HaMelech, because I think he was the king of gratitude. He was the king of knowing how to live an existence where, despite the fact that he probably suffered, I mean, according to Shochatov in Perek Tes, in Sadiq Base on Tehillim, he suffered more than Eov. He suffered more than any human being in world history. It sounds like, I think it must have been even more than Trump. He suffered so much aggravation from people and family and society. It was beyond. But he was focused on this. This is not denial of this. We're living in a world that will say, if you don't pay attention to this, you're in denial. And what we're saying is, okay, if you want to go with that logic, then you also have to be consistent with your logic, because then you mustn't deny this either. And if you don't deny this, guess what's going to happen? If you attend to this, well, guess what's going to happen to the Mara Shchera? You'll be able to handle it. Because your mind is so absorbed by the good that nothing will be able to kidnap that yediyah, that realization, that absorption in simcha. Nothing can steal our simcha unless we let it. And that's why Rav Nachman talks about what are the sabotages of my simcha. One of them is pigay and mikre hazman. And we looked at those words. It's on a constant basis. I am interfacing with people and situations, traffic, a deal that's just looks like it's starting to possibly go sour. I'm so invested, I've got to make this work. And so many things will start kidnapping my mind from this. How do you stay there? How do you stay there and not get stuck on this? Because this is going to happen all day long, as long as I'm alive. Until 120, this is reality, because this is Olam HaSheker. So we're going to look, Be'ezrat Hashem, how David HaMelech handled this, because I think those are the clues, and it fits in perfectly with how Rav Nachman is talking about how Simcha is the cure-all. It's not just a lachatchila, it's not just a chumrah, it's not midas chasidus, it's reality. So we're going to look at that carefully. Any questions or comments on this so far? So what do I mean, don't get stuck on symptoms? Don't get stuck on the Mara Shchera, because they're only symptoms. They're only symptoms of other things, but the real place to get stuck is in the Simcha. That's where we need to get stuck. Simcha is a thought. Simcha is in Machshava. Machshava b'Simcha is the same oisius. Simcha alone is, as the Baal Shem HaKadosh tells us, is Sham Moyach. So Simcha is really a mindset. That's really what it is. And I really have to buy into that, because living in America, I'm saying it's just a Western value where the pursuit of happiness is a brilliant statement. Because if you think about it, I'm never going to be happy because I'm always in pursuit of it. And when I discover that this doesn't make me happy, I've got to run after something else that other people telling me makes them happy. So what happens if there is no happiness outside of us? There is no happiness. It only starts here. And if it starts here, then hasamech bechelkai means the more chelik I'm counting, the more happiness I'm adding to my simcha bank, so to speak. More deposits. So comes along Rav Nachman's, my simple understanding is that Mara Shchera is non-reality. So that's why we've got to push it away with all our koiches. And in the previous Torah, we've actually got to run after it. But you got to be strong enough not to be afraid of it, to run after it and just say, hey, I can take this on. You know why? Because it doesn't matter how big this looks, it will never, ever be, ever able to take over my picture. This could be multiplied 1 billion times. It still can't take over this, because this is unlimited. Hoidu Lashem, ki tov, ki le'olam chazdai. Because if I get stuck on his chesed, it's unlimited. So the piece I want to look at here in understanding the mind-body relationship is, so where's my mind supposed to be? So it happens to be Tarek Mitzvahs. I don't know if this is a chiddush or not, but in Kuf Yotes, we know Kuf Yotes in Tehillim, it's the longest kapitel. It's 176 verses. Of 176 verses, every single one, except for 3, every single one refers to Tarek Mitzvahs. Every single one. And if you ask yourself, what's he talking about when he says mitzvahs? Chukim, edus, mishpatim. And you start realizing, hey, these are all the different categories that we know Tarek Mitzvahs come under. But when you start looking at it closely and reading Mepharshim, it becomes so glaringly obvious that his mind was so fixated by Tarek Mitzvahs. They didn't have Svarim in those days. There's no Mishnayos, no Gemara has been written yet. You knew everything. Kol Torah Shebal Peh and Nigla Nista was contained in the Araisa of Torah Shebichtav. Torah Shebichtav has 2 parts to it. There's a storyline, B'ris Olam, till Moshe Rabbeinu enters Eretz Yisrael, and then Nach is another 1,000 years. But in the storyline of B'ris Olam, 10 generations from Adam till Noach, the Mabul, 10 generations from Noach till Avram, the life of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Yosef, sold, goes down to Mitzrayim, we're reunited, then 10 Makkos 10, then you got Yetziat Mitzrayim, and Matan Torah coming soon in a shul near you, and then you got 40 years in the Midbar, end of 2,488 years of Brias Olam, then another 1,000 or so for the Zman of the Tkufa of the Nevi'im, and that's the end of Tanakh. Contained in the storyline are Targum Mitzvahs. The Targum Mitzvahs are in the Chumash, 2,488 years. However, we mentioned this, but in Malas HaTorah, which is from the Vilna Gaon's brother, who quotes his brother, that Targum Mitzvahs is a 613. That's a number of the root directories. The 613 roots of all Targum Mitzvahs. But actually, the number of Targum Mitzvahs is unlimited. There's no end to how many you can find. So I thought this is very interesting, because going through Kufiyut test, which Be'ezras Hashem, I'm just going to give you like a sampling, not today. You can open up any pasuk except for 3. I'm working on finding the Taryag in those 3. But you look at any pasuk, you realize what he's celebrating is Taryag mitzvahs. Even when he's talking about pain, and there's quite a few psukim. Dalfa nafshi mituga, one of my favorite. Dalfa is from Dalef, means dripping. Dalfa nafshi, my soul's dripping. Now, if something is dripping, that means it's saturated. It's not contained. It's overflowing. It's dripping from it. Dalfa nafshi, my soul's dripping mituga from agony. That's the yagon is agony from pain. Udvarecha kaimeni. But I didn't stop keeping your words, the words of your Torah. Every single pasuk, except for 3, is talking about Taryag mitzvahs. He was obsessed in a good way about Taryag mitzvah. He was so stuck on the good that he couldn't stop counting all the good that Hashem was doing. There was another mitzvah to cleave to. So what's interesting, and this is what we're going to touch on now, is when you look at the mitzvahs of the mind, there are 6 which we know are tadir, constant, emunah in Hashem. No other power exists except Hashem. Hashem is echad, everything is one. It's all one perfect unit working together. Avas Hashem, Yiras Hashem, and then lo tatiru achrei levavchem. That's the 6 that's listed by Sefer Chinuch, and it's quoted in First Biur Halacha in Mishnah Berurah. Everyone quotes those 6. Happens to be Sefer Haredim counts 10, and Rambam has 20. And I thought that's interesting, because one of my, I don't know what to call it, I don't call it a hobby, havdil, but one of my obsessions is Taryag mitzvahs. And what I thought is very interesting, you go through all the Rishonim that are Moinei HaMitzvahs, because they don't all agree with the same 613. But when you go through them all and ask, how many mitzvahs of the mind are there? Now, Chinuch defines 6 constant ones. There are about 60 constant ones when you take all the Moinei HaMitzvahs. And if you count all the mitzvahs of the mind, it's over 100. So far, I found 107. If that's really the case, then when we look at what Rav Nachman is telling us, mitzvah gdoliyos b'simcha. So where's that taking place? So if I'm going to be b'simcha and not let the mara shchora, no matter what it is that is going on in my life, to steal my attention, and if it gets my attention, it will be momentary. I may have to empathize with someone who's going through pain, but it's not going to take away from the simcha, which is the metzias. That's the reality. So we're going to talk about how do you do that. The first place I need to be is realizing my function in everything is taking place only in one place. It's in my thoughts. And that once I know that, then I can become more aware, hopefully, that sinner, natira, complaining, these are thoughts. And they are lavim in the Torah, and there's even mitzvahs to remember all the complaints we had in the midbar. That's one of Taryag. And it's a mitzvah not to be megadef, not tashlom curse Hashem. And if you look at the smaller detail, we realize every complaint is a form of, not tashlom cursing, but it's a form of going in that direction. Because what is a curse of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That you're not running the world the way I want it, and I'm so angry. Has v'shalom, a person actually would be mekalel, but going in the wrong direction is actually complaining. That's what Rav Nachman, we quoted it in Mem Beis in Sichas Haran, that every complaint is actually against Hashem, because I'm really saying, I don't like the way you're running my world right now. Please give me the steering wheel. Let me show you which direction it's supposed to go in the marriage with the kid, etc. No. Emunah is 100%. It's not. There's no room for not emunah. So, if it's emunah, then Hashem, you're running the world. So, I'm going to just touch on a few of these mitzvahs. If you're interested, I'll either email you or I'll bring you copies next week. Right now it's just 20 pages. There's only 107 there, but I've given you all the Makaras, most of the pages, the Makaras for where we know this is one of Tariag, and how do you explain it? Because these are all taking place over here. But once I become more and more aware that happiness is a mind, is what I'm thinking. Unhappiness is what I'm thinking. The more I'm aware that sinner, natira, bearing a grudge, remembering other people's mistakes, complaining, and I start to pay more attention to the words that come out my mouth on a daily basis of what I typically complain about, or the past that I complain about. There's lots of chazals that tell me, just don't go there. Mada ava ava, it happened, move on. I think the best example I can think of is the first time HaKadosh Baruch Hu talked to Cain, which we mentioned. Cain couldn't get over his kinna. He was so angry that Hashem rejected him and accepted the carbon from Hevel, that even with Hashem revealing himself, peh lepeh, panim lepanim, and saying, Vayema Hashem el Cain. That's astonishing. He's in depression and Hashem still came to him because he doesn't want this. This is not a description of what took place 5,000 years ago, 5,700. This is a description for all future generations of how I'm supposed to deal with my own atzvus and marash chara. Because Hashem says, Lama charalach, why are you angry? I've got tons of things that trigger my anger. Lama naflu fanecha, there's so many times my face just drops. It's an expression, I'm paying attention to the marash chara in my life. And that brings Has V'Shalom to Atzvus. And Hashem tells him, Im teitev seis, if you want to improve yourself, you'll elevate yourself. Look at Ramban there, it says, elevate yourself beyond your brother. You'll go higher than where he is right now. I accepted his command, but you can turn it all around. You can turn it all around. You're the firstborn. You've got special koiches that a firstborn is invested with, that when you do a mitzvah and do tshuva for an avera, you're providing leadership for the future, because that's what essentially is the purpose of a firstborn. Look at Ramsham Shul Fel Hirsch. I remember the pasuk, but it's in Perek Yud Beis, where it's talking about Makas Bechoros. Why Makas Bechoros? Ramsham Shul Fel Hirsch explains that in the ancient world, a Bechor was the future leader, and he was held in a very special esteem. And when a Bechor would Has V'Shalom die before their time, so to speak, that is a tremendous loss to the family, because it was known that the Bechor is invested with leadership qualities, caring for all those beneath that person. So in that sense, Makas Bechoros was the destruction of the future of Egypt. That's why it was the Makkah Patish. There was total Yush in the Egyptian empire. Whoever survived, there was no future. Zero. So here's our first Bechor, Cain. He had an amazing opportunity to listen to Hashem. Wow, Rebbeinu Shalom, if you say that, imitative says, I can improve and pick myself up, and not just says, I will elevate myself beyond even my brother who brought the best of his fleece as a carbon. This is an amazing statement, because what Hashem is basically saying, whenever I'm down on myself, I should know, Ata Timshal Boy. You can overcome this Yetzer Hara, which Rav Nachman tells us, Torah 49, we've quoted a few times, the Yetzer Hara is Machshavas Ra'is. The Yetzer Tov is Machshavas Tovas. It's so important to get stuck on this, because that's the real meaning of Leiv. That's why it's so empowering, that it's not anything that's taking place outside of me that's bringing the marash chara. It's what I'm thinking about it that's making me fall into marash chara. And once I know it's me who's generating it, I'm inducing my own agony, my own daiga, worry, fear. Then who's in charge now? So lepetachat roivetz, the Yetzer Hara is waiting to pounce on me at the first opening. The atat timshal boy, but you can be ruler over him. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch is telling us. And Rav Nachman, I believe, is empowering us that Simcha is the cure-all, and it's the way to deal with this over here. I think every mental practitioner who would know Rav Nachman's teachings would be able to cure every person who's coming in thinking they got mental problems or anguish and anxiety ad ein sof, and help them realize let's focus on the toiv, and the sa and su mira will take care of itself. So I'm going to touch on very quickly. These are thoughts that are part of Tarek mitzvahs. I'm going to go very, very fast. Emunah is one of Tarek mitzvahs. So nothing can go wrong because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in control. He can do anything. The pasuk for that mitzvah is Anochi Hashem Elokecha, and it's all singular. I'm your power of all powers. Yours, personally yours. Asher hotziticha. It's not you, Chem. It's you. And if I could take you out of Mitzrayim, the physical Mitzrayim, and you've got a special mitzvah to remember you were there as slaves in Mitzrayim, but I can take you out of any Mitzrayim, Meitzayam. I can take you out of any limitations because I'm all powerful. You can turn to me for everything and anything. No, there's no other powers beside you. Lo yeh lecha Elohim achirim al panai. Lecha. There are no other powers. They're self-induced. That's why avodah zarah and anger are considered synonymous, because when I get angry, that means I am giving power to the item that is angering me. So you have power, you make me so mad. Excuse me? You make me mad? How do you get inside my brain and touch my mad button? How do you get inside my brain and touch my anger button? The very words I should be ashamed to say the words, because now I make you the power that controls me. And Hashem says, do you remember my second pasuk in the Decalogue in Aseret Dibros? I said, there are no other powers. Lo yeh lecha Elohim achirim al panai. Have no other powers. And if you take the pasuk seriously, al panai, in front of my faces. What are my faces? Rabbi Nachman says in Samach Gimel, it's my hashgacha pratis. Every cloud, every raindrop, every blow of wind, every sunshine, everything that I don't control, which is everything except my bechira, is hashgacha. And Hashem's he's got lots of faces. He's hiding behind all of that. It's only Hashem's faces. Peel away the face, Hashem's hiding behind that. Hashem's invisible hashgacha pratis taking place all the time. Love Hashem. Hashem is one. These are all thoughts. They're all taking place over here. Think about the following. When a person's besimcha, are they mekayim automatically the mitzvah of emunah? Because if he's besimcha, is it
everything that happens?
Yeah. So then that feeds he believes. So he's getting the mitzvah of emunah and he's getting simcha as well. According to Orchat Tzadikim, simcha is a multiplier. It's a huge multiplier. It multiplies any mitzvah you're doing with the simcha by 1,000 times. If you're besimcha, are you showing you love Hashem? Are you mekayim mitzvah of avas Hashem? Yes or no? Yeah. Are you mekayim mitzvah of Hashem is echad? You see, the point is really the following. Hashem didn't create Tarek mitzvahs in such a way that when you're doing one mitzvah, you can't be doing another. That is true that if I'm in the sukkah right now, so I can't be in the mikveh, so I'm not getting the mitzvah of mikveh, I'm in the sukkah. If I'm in the sukkah right now, so I'm not in the best medrash learning, I'm shokling a lulav. But that's all in the physical mitzvahs. But in the mitzvahs of the mind, of which there are over 100, in that each one can be a huge multiplier of another.
How do you have, the Rabbi always says you can't have too much Shabbos.
You can't.
Actively think about these mitzvahs?
No, you don't. That's the whole chap. The whole chap is just
100 mitzvahs going on at once in your mind.
You're 100%. I can't. That's why these can be 6 Talmidi mitzvahs, or by the way, this is not me coming up with that's not just 6. I used to be consultant for a organization called Tariag Foundation. Rabbi David Wax in Lakewood. Bezrat Hashem is going to be renewed soon, but he went to many Gedolim. We're talking about many years ago. Reb Chaim Kanievsky with the same question: why does the Sefer Chinuch only identify 6? There's way more than that apply every second of your life. He asked Reb Shmuel Arbach, Reb Shlomo Zalman Arbach Atzal. He asked Reb Noach Weinberg. I'm trying to remember all the names. I wrote it in my document. And all of them said they have the same kasha, they couldn't find an answer. Why does Sefer Chinuch only identify 6 when there's, by the count of all the Moni HaMitzvahs, there's way more? So, but to answer your question, I can't have 2 thoughts at once, but Hashem loves us so much that He's going to take one thought and multiply it in terms of schar. That a person, in their mind, when they have emunah, and they're doing it with simcha. That's 1,000 times a mitzvah of emunah. And if it's not easy, that's 100 times a regular mitzvah, because mutar mitzvah achas b'tzah mimeh shaloi b'tzah. That's Avos Reb Nosson. I think it's Perek Vav Ois Gimel. So you've got all these multipliers. According to Malas Torah, from the Vilna Gaon's brother, he claims that every single time, he is quoting his brother, the Vilna Gaon, every single time a mitzvah is repeated in the Torah, that's how many times you get that mitzvah when you do that one mitzvah. The mitzvah of, for example, he brings, for example, Talmud Torah is repeated 34 times. So every word of Torah counts 34 times. Then he says, but you've got to also count all the times you get the mitzvah in Nach. So if you take the mitzvah of Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, which is what you're Mekayim when you're Besimcha, and you Achdus, because you're saying, look, it's really Hashem. There's nothing else. So you're getting all these multipliers simultaneously. What I'm trying to bring up is a case that this is so glaringly obvious, the white is so overwhelmingly glaring and obvious, that when it comes to the Marosh Chora, it's so much easier to deal with, because Ein Yush Olam Klal has to mean this can't exist. And this can't grow, the weeds can't grow and take over my garden, because this is my focus, this is where I live. But if I live over here or spend time, let's say once a week for an hour, I spend time and money going over here, well, guess what? I can water the weeds, and more water the weeds. I turn this into such a reality. I go over it, I worry about it, and I start doing all sorts of ishtadlus to undo it. We've got almost 40%, please be machal me, almost 40% of our kids in schools, yeshivas today, are on medications and in therapy. And it's all because we're paying attention to this. Give our children the strategies for how to be happy and not get stuck. It was very good, it is very good, it's going to be even better. Get stuck in reality. That's what we should be training all our mental practitioners, to help parents and children deal with God's reality. That's this over here. And this will take care of itself. Hostages coming out of Gaza, they're coming out almost all the same, with the same lines. That there was only Hashem. That's Emunah and Hashem kept me alive. They didn't go in from. I'm not saying they came out, but in their mindset, they had a total change of mindset. And many did become from afterwards. But the point is that this is the only place we operate. And sometimes it takes my body being taken hostage to pay attention to what's going over here, because that's all I've got. This has happened many times to quadriplegics. This is where they realize, I got to make peace with me. I think I shared with you what's his name, Superman. So love of Hashem, Yiras Hashem, Lo taturu achrei levavchem. Oh, this is huge. When you're besimcha, you're mekayim the mitzvah tadir of tamidi of not going after your thoughts, because it's Hashem who's telling me, pay attention to the beauty of my world. Look, be happy that you're a Jew. That's huge, huge, huge. What I'm also trying to do with this is feed into where Rav Nachman talks about, even if you can find pagamim, brings us in Reish Pei Beis. If I can find pagamim in everything that's good about what I've ever done, still find some Nakuda Tova. But there's one thing you can't find any pagamim, because it was Hashem's choice. He made me a Jew. He didn't make me a Gentile. That's two sides of the same coin. But what's so huge about that? Okay, so physically I'm not a goy. No. When a Jew thinks these mitzvahs, he doesn't get all these multipliers. When a Jew comes first 10 in Shachris, he doesn't get all these multipliers. He doesn't get. Olam Haba is completely different. We're the only religion, that happens to be true by the way, that all the rest are fake. Some are made in China, some are made in India, but they're all fake, all man-made. But we happen to be also the only religion on record that actually claims you don't have to be Jewish to get Olam Haba. That's incredible. That's how confident we are. A goy keeps 7 mitzvahs. He can get Olam Haba. He doesn't have to do 613. We discourage him, in fact. So when you think about Shelo Asani Goy, it's all the privileges that comes with Atem Banim L'Hashem Elokechem. So remember Hashem. That's actually one of Tarek mitzvahs. Uzchartet Hashem Elokecha. And it's counted by. I've got all the makos. It's not in Rambam's count, but it's in Charedim and Rabbeinu Yonah. Don't forget Hashem. That's one of Tarek mitzvahs. In fact, the Smug he wrote his own list of Tarek mitzvahs. He had a dream where a malach came and told him, you've forgotten the main mitzvah. Don't forget Hashem. And then when the smug wrote that mitzvah, he said that I got a gilui, and the pasuk that goes with it, the pasuk is in Shaloi lishkoch emunas elikus hisham elcha pentishkach Hashem elokecha, Dvarim 6:12, almost 6:13. Don't forget Hashem, and he mentions there. Rambam didn't include this, but he had a gilui that this is one of Tariag. Don't forget Hashem. When you're besimcha, and you're besimcha because you know Hashem is in control, you get this mitzvah. So it's true you can't have two thoughts simultaneously, but Hashem loves us so much that He won't give you only schar for the mitzvah of simcha now. Every other mitzvah that you're getting because of it is accumulative in the count that what Hashem is counting. And that, in Malas HaTorah, it talks about this, and you get Yiras Hashem. Yiras Hashem, it counts how many times? It's 52 times. It's mentioned in the Torah. Every time you avoid doing a mitzvah, or you avoid a Mara Shchera of a Mehirur Avera, you get the mitzvah of Yiras Hashem times 54. So you get 54 mitzvahs every second that it's just constant. It's just constant. Wearing tzitzit, you get every rega you're wearing tzitzit, you get a mitzvah deoraisa. So you count up how many seconds in a year. It's about 15 million. So you get 15 million mitzvahs for wearing tzitzis every day. And the smuk, by the way, he counts wearing tzitzis as a mitzvah tamidi. So Bavli, and we paskin like Bavli, the uri'isem oisei, when you look at your tzitzis, that's only in daytime. However, it's actually a machlokes in Perek Gimel in Yerushalmi. I saw it very recently, that's why I remember it, where the Chachamim say it's a mitzvah tamidi, because Uri'isem Osai is going on seeing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because you kept the mitzvah of tzitzis. It's not going on that it's at daytime. And the fact that you've got to make Al Kanfei Bigdehem on the four corners, it's the four corner garment that is Machayev you in the mitzvah of tzitzis, which is not tali on time. It's not tali on Uri'isem Osai because they have a different limit for that. So as long as you've got a four corner garment, now you have the chiyuv on the mitzvah of tzitzis, it's by day and night. So he counts it as a mitzvah tamidi. And he adds on, it's not only a mitzvah to wear tzitzis, but every time you look at it, you get a mitzvah tamidi. Every single, so the amount of, so, well, how's the pasuk go? We say at the end, before every, what do you call it? The Kaddish, Durbanon, say, Leman Sidkai, how's it start up? Yagbil Tarvi Yadir, how's it? Ratza HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lizakos Es Yisrael. So here Belahem Torah mitzvahs. It's not the Tariag only, it's the multipliers within every single mitzvah. And that's extraordinary Nadivas Alev, extraordinary chesed, extraordinary love. And that's really, as we start to pay attention to this, it becomes, I think, more obvious why, knowing what the Tariq mitzvahs are that apply to the mind, that this is something we can actually live inside. Mitzvah gedola lihiyos b'simcha. It's a huge mitzvah to exist inside happiness. That means get immersed in all the mitzvahs of the mind, because there's so many. There's no moment in time and space which is devoid of being able to be davak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Dveikus is also one of Tariag, and it's included in this list. Do you follow? I'm trying to build a case of logic where Rav Nachman is helping us understand that the mind is everything, and the mind is where simcha exists, and it's the mind that will cure disease and avoid disease. And it's the Marash Chaya that steals my ability to go there. And then when he talks about at the end of this short Torah about the importance of Lev Nishbar, but that's only at a time that's meyuchad for regret and charata for the things I've done and still do, and I'm asking Hashem to help me get out of that. But otherwise, all the rest of the time is besimcha. So it doesn't mean 23 hours simcha, 1 hour. But atzvus is not included in the hisbodus. If I see that after I had the hisbodus that I'm down, that's a good siman that the hisbodus is going in the wrong direction, and that really the Marash Chara is kind of the Yetzer Hara taking over me. That he brings in Sichas Aran Memhei to watch out that the simon for knowing that the hisbodus is working is if a person comes out b'simcha afterwards. He feels a certain relief that he was able to talk to Hashem and let off whatever's on his chest in that session. So please be welcome for ending here. Any questions or comments?
That's the thing again about the machshavas with all those mitzvahs.
Yes.
Is it necessary to actively think them all at once, or just by doing one it already includes all the others?
One includes all the others, but what I'll share with you where we see there is a chiyuv to know Taryag mitzvahs. It's a kind of an obvious chiyuv. The Shach on Shulchan Aruch, he wrote a sefer called Poel Tzedek, and he said he believes that the reason why Torah is going down and down and down in each generation is because we don't pay attention to knowing all Taryag mitzvahs. He said it's a davar pashut. He even brings a gematria, I don't have it here, of Moshe Rabbeinu is actually the gematria Taryag mitzvahs. The point is that by knowing the mitzvahs of the mind, the awareness is what starts to make a person realize how much you love me. You really love me. Oh my gosh, I get dveikus, I get ahava, I get yiras Hashem. I'm avoiding, lo taturu means I'm avoiding sinna, natira, nekama, kina, lo tachmoid. Every lo taseh that has to do with the mind, Charedim counts 81 mitzvahs, of which 54 of them, I think, are lo tasehs of the mind. I'm getting all those lo tasehs, I'm avoiding them just in the one here of teshuvah. That's huge, and the amount of times it's mentioned in the Torah is another multiplier. But if you're doing teshuvah b'simcha, you're multiplying it by every aveira now goes to the other side of the scale. It's literally endless. But the awareness of that is what helps a person stay inside simcha. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't mean Olam Hazeh is not going to happen. She's going to carry on 24/7, 365. But this is where Rabbeinu Zal, Rav Nachman wants us to be. Is this making sense? I don't want you to. I don't want you to think that I'm making this up. I want to be able to show you where I think it's in the words.
So that's also Shat Mitzvah Gedolah.
Yeah.
The question was, I think you mentioned it. What do you mean Mitzvah Gedolah? A big mitzvah, small. All mitzvahs are the same.
Right.
But here it's, if in every mitzvah of simcha, I'm including so many different mitzvahs.
Right.
That's what makes it mitzvah gedolah.
That's what Mitzvah Gedolah. Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry I'm ending a little bit early.
Thank you.
Baruch Tiyeh.